Why are you Catholic? Good day, brothers and sisters in Christ. I hope you're doing fine. It is an honor and with great joy that I was given an opportunity to share today with you the importance of apologetics. My interest in apologetics started in my college days. We had this activity in our classroom and a mock debate in our philosophy class. And the topic was creation versus science. Fortunately, I was picked on the creationist side. In my preparation, I discovered that there were numerous ways to answer the objections of scientism. And my research led me to the five ways of St. Thomas Aquinas. So there, he laid out the reasoning and the proofs of God's existence. And that debate started a fire in my heart to study apologetics. And eventually, as my interest grows, uh, I've attended a series of lectures and read books on how uh, to defend the faith. And as I learned more of the whats and the whys of the faith, uh, the more I was able to appreciate and practice it. That led me to a deeper relationship with Christ and His church. And so, I want to share with you why Catholic apologetics is necessary in living out our faith. And where is it in the picture of the new evangelization? So, first, let me define our terms. So, what is apologetics? Some people may think that apologetics is the art of saying you're sorry for being Catholic. This, however, is not the case. Sometimes people get confused between the ancient word apologetic and the modern word apologize. The word apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia, which means to defend. An apologist, therefore, is one who defends someone or something. The study of Catholic apologetics is the study of how one can defend the Catholic faith. Although Catholic apologetics involves answering objections, this in and of itself is not its goal. The goal of apologetics is to open the door or to clear a path for conversion. And in our work in evangelization, often we meet people who are open to the faith. Many of them are already practicing Catholics, and that's good because they're already open to the gospel. But as we all know, not everybody is open to spiritual conversion. Many times, people have misunderstandings and prejudices concerning our Lord and His Church. And sadly, even some of our Catholic brothers and sisters have objections with the faith. We often hear people say, I'm Catholic, but I'm Catholic, but I don't agree with the moral teachings of the church. So I'm Catholic, but this or that. And so, even within the church, there are many misunderstandings about the faith. And this prevents a person to fully live and see the genius and beauty and goodness of the Catholic faith. Saint Peter, our first pope, said in 1 Peter 3, verse 15 to 16, "But in your hearts, sanctify Christ as Lord. Always be ready to make your defense to anyone who demands from you an account for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and reverence." What he is saying is, when people see that hope, that love and joy that Christ brings to your life, be prepared to explain it. That is apologetics. Apologetics is an ancient practice. This is not something new, or actually, it is very old. Saint Justin Martyr is one of the first apologists of the church. Uh, he lived at a time where when there were pagans and Jews and Christians all around the Roman Empire. He lived at a time when Christians are persecuted and being misunderstood. So, which is the same of what's happening today, right? People have many misconceptions about the faith. But Justin Martyr was born a pagan, then he converted to Christianity, uh, and he loved the faith, and he began to see the misconception that pagans had and started to defend the church's teachings. So he even wrote a letter called the First Apology around 150 AD. So one misconceptions of the pagans is that they think that Christians are cannibals because they eat and drink the body and blood of Christ. But Justin defended that teaching in about the Eucharist. Another is they accuse Christians of incest because they hear some of Christians were married to their brothers and sisters in Christ. So, and he explained that once you became baptized, you are now belong to the Christian family, and so it is not biological relation but a spiritual one. So, this is apologetics, taking the misconception and and then showing them the logical, reasonable, and sometimes scriptural proofs about the faith. Apologetics is the removal of intellectual obstacles that prevent someone from accepting Christ and His church. So the key word there is intellectual. Intellectual obstacles involves faulty reasoning and or misunderstandings. For example, if someone refuses to believe that the Catholic Church is the true church because it teaches that we should worship Mary as a goddess, so then they are burdened with an intellectual obstacle. The obstacle here is the wrong notion that the Catholic Church teaches that Mary is a goddess. So once this misunderstanding is cleared up, the person will be one step closer towards evangelism. But uh, not every obstacles that impedes evangelism is intellectual. Sometimes people attack the Catholic faith for other reasons. So, for example, uh, others may present all sorts of objections and to the faith because they were they have been divorced and remarried. Here, what's really obstructing the path to evangelism is not anything intellectual. Rather, it is moral and an unwillingness to change one's lifestyle. Sometimes the obstacle is encountered is emotional. It is not uncommon to find people who have been hurt by Catholic parents, by Catholic teachers and religious, and they have developed a very strong revulsion to the faith. Someone uh, may have grown up in a Catholic family where the faith was rigidly imposed to the children. Another common obstacle is personal preference. So deep-seated prejudices like racism, sexism, nationalism, and even social snobbery may become a sub-intellectual obstacle to the Catholic faith. And so, those are the four types of obstacles in evangelism. So, again, intellectual, which concerns the doctrines and practices. Next is moral, which concerns the fear of one's lifestyle will change. Third, emotional, which comes from being injured by a Catholic person. And lastly, the personal preference, which are deep-seated biases, prejudices, customs, or social pressures. So these are the obstacles that hinders people into accepting Christ and the Catholic faith. I remember my conversation with a colleague of mine in my work. We are talking about the faith, and I found out that she was a former Catholic that converted to and joined a born again church. So I asked her, "Why did you left the Catholic Church?" Then she said, because in the Catholic Church, we worship statues made of stones and woods. And I asked her, in the past when you are still a Catholic, did you really worship the statues? Then she said, no, I didn't. Then I said to her, uh, then why did you believe the pastor that said to you and that taught that in your church? Then she just replied me with a smile, but I can see her face, the realization that, wait a minute, uh, that's actually true. The pastor is wrong. Catholics don't worship statues. So that silence actually ended our conversation, but I know that a seed of truth has been planted in her mind and heart that day. Also, some have a negative view on apologetics. They think apologetics is confrontational and aggressive. Sometimes it is equated with debates and argumentation. Although debates are included in apologetics, it is not the main goal of it. And apologetics is necessary for dialogue. How will one convince the other of the truth if he doesn't know it, right? The goal is the conversion of a person to the faith. Apologetics is a component of evangelization. So we have three components in evangelization. So first, catechism or catechesis. It is the instruction of the content of the faith. This includes a description of who God is and how we ought to live. So in other words, it tells us what we believe as Catholics. The best example of this is the Catechism of the Catholic Church. So in there, the doctrines and the teachings of uh, the church are put into one resource. So this is very helpful in knowing our faith. Then the second component is the kerygma or evangelism. It is the primary introduction of the person to Christ and to salvation history. Through this instruction, people are attracted to Christ and began to be with Him and to be more like Him. So this is where people know, live, and share Christ. Then next, the third component, again, apologetics. So it is a subcategory of catechesis, but instead of focusing on what we believe as Catholics, apologetics focuses on why we believe what we believe. So for example, in catechesis, we learn what is the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception. While in apologetics, we describe why we believe the Immaculate Conception is biblical, historical, and in accord with reason. So those are the three components or disciplines in evangelization. So if we want to be effective evangelists, we should use these three disciplines. So how does this three connects with each other? As you can see, these three disciplines are different from uh, one another, yet they are important in the fulfillment of the other two. So they are interconnected. Apologetics is a deepening of catechesis. If one learns what we believe without knowing why we believe, the whole process of learning about the faith is somewhat superficial or perhaps artificial. Imagine if a Catholic knows what a procession is, but doesn't know why Catholics do it. That person might become a fanatic because uh, he is just going to the motions of the faith, but does not have an idea why he or she is doing it. Imagine a Catholic who goes to Mass every Sunday but does not understand what's happening during consecration or is not aware of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. That person may be receiving the Eucharist but uh, may have a lack of reverence to it, or much worse, may commit liturgical abuses. So that's the role of apologetics in catechesis. It avoids these kinds of dangers so that the faithful will be more equipped in living the faith. Archbishop Fulton Sheen once wrote, "There are not 100 people in the United States who hate the Catholic Church. There are millions, however, who hate what they wrongly believe to be the Catholic Church, which is, of course, a quite different thing. So, apologetics help in clearing the confusion and misconceptions so that people can truly see the truth of the Catholic faith. So, in relation with evangelism, apologetics helps in removing the obstacles that may prevent someone to be open to Christ. And then, catechesis also play an important role in evangelism. Evangelism introduces Christ to the person. However, how can one love someone who they don't know? The more one knows Christ, the more he can love him. And the more they love him, the more they want to know him. I remember we had this youth camp in the past where I've encountered a participant and I found out that she doesn't know who Jesus Christ is. We have this group sharing and they were asked, who is Jesus Christ to you? And she had a hard time answering, and when I pressed the question, I found out that she really didn't know who Jesus is. She knows that an image or statue portrays to Jesus, but that's it. That's all she knows. So that's where catechesis enters the picture. So if we just introduce Christ but does not present who he really is, it will not be rooted deep in a person's soul. For us to see it more clearly, here's an analogy. Picture a sailing ship tied to a port, and the ship needs to make anchor on an island. So what needs to be done for the ship to make it to the island? First, the ropes that bind the ship to the port need to be removed. So this is apologetics because it is the removal of obstacles that prevents evangelism. If the ropes were not removed, the ship won't be able to set sail. Second, the ship needs to hoist its sails. The sails are evangelism, which moves the person closer to Christ. Even if the ropes were removed, a ship without a sail will never make it to the island. Thirdly, even without the ropes and the sails has been set, the ship will not make it into the island. Why? Uh, it needs to be guided by a rudder. The rudder is catechesis. So without a rudder, the ship may indeed set sail, but might easily go to the wrong direction. So these three play a role in the process of conversion. If we want to evangelize, we must learn how to close the loop so that the person will not just be introduced to Christ, but to really know him and eventually understand why he believes and why he follows him. There's a wave of new apologetics in the church today. If you are frequent in Catholic social media pages, chances are most of them have apologetics content. I know in the US, Catholic Answers is one of the most popular apologetics organization there. So you have Trent Horn, Jimmy Akin, and the group. You also have Augustine Institute, where you find Dr. Scott Hahn and Dr. Tim Gray, and so many more. That's where the giants of apologetics are. So please take time to know them and their works. So I guarantee that you will find gold, and it will help you to get deeper in the faith. But beware, brothers and sisters, there is also a new wave of skepticism and relativism in the world. Aside from the attacks and objections of non-Catholic Christians, there are atheists and the secular who undermine Christianity. Nowadays, there are people who believe that Jesus was just a myth and not a historical figure. They say that the Bible is just a book of full of fairy tale stories. And so, we must equip ourselves with the knowledge and wisdom of our faith. So what do we need to do in practicing apologetics? So first, read the Bible. get knowledgeable in the stories and the passages, know the salvation history. So read the Gospels, but also don't forget to read the Old Testament. It's common for us to be familiar in the New Testament, but we are at loss when we are reading the Old. So Saint Augustine once said, "The New Testament is hidden in the Old Testament, and the Old is revealed in the New." So we must read both in light of one another. In apologetics, remember, context is key. Then second, uh, aside from reading our Bibles, second is know your catechism. So read what the church teaches throughout his history. Uh, know the deposit of our faith. Study the doctrines and prayers. All of these are readily available in one book. So get a catechism of the Catholic Church. Then third, look back to the early church fathers. Many have no idea how rich is that church history. The early fathers are those Christians who knows the apostles themselves, or those who live very close to the time of the apostles. These people have been teaching and battling the heresies and errors of their time. You will be amazed when you find out that uh, what they teach back then is also what is being taught today by the church. I encourage you to dig deeper and start somewhere. Start reading and watching Catholic resources. So start flexing your Catholic muscles. And, you know, God has given us the gift of modern technologies and which we can use to evangelize. Imagine the reach of just one post. Even atheists and non-Christians can be reached. The apostles didn't have that convenience. Saint Paul didn't have such technology. They need to walk and ride horses for days just to reach another city. And they need to risk themselves in going to pagan places to just to preach. But today, we have the world in our fingertips. I've had dialogues with atheists and non-Catholics from other countries. So that's not possible in their time, but now it is possible. That's how powerful the technology is. So let's use it. Bishop Robert Barron, the auxiliary bishop of the Diocese of Los Angeles, once said, "We got a smart tradition. The Catholic tradition is a smart tradition, intellectually profound and rich. We will not tell our story effectively if we turn away from that richness. We must stop dumbing down our tradition if we are going to make the story compelling. That's the way we will light a fire on the earth." You know, my friends, the original evangelization done by the apostles and the early Christians is for the non-Christian world. We are now called to the new evangelization, which is proclaiming the same gospel that the early Christians had preached in the world, but we are now preaching it in a world that has been de-Christianized. We need apologetics if we want to win the modern souls back to Christ. A few years ago, I started a liturgical Bible study group in our office. Uh, I've invited my colleagues and eventually even non-Catholics joined. We did this once a week at lunchtime. In our Bible studies, I sometimes include apologetics that are related to the readings. There were these two colleagues of mine, one former Catholic who converted and attended a Victory Fellowship born again church, and the other is also a former Catholic but end up in Mormonism. Little did I know that they were fascinated and caught by the truth of the Catholic faith. Later, they just told me that they are back in the Catholic Church and they were attending Mass. So I lent a book to them, The Rome Sweet Home. So that's a classic in apologetics. It is a conversion story of uh, a former Protestant pastor, Dr. Scott Hahn and his wife. So I lent it to them and just to close the loop. And now they are both of them they are active and practicing Catholics. So I think apologetics opened a door for them to go back home in our church. And I thank God for that opportunity to be able to evangelize and convert people back to Him. So after all of this is His work. Allow God to use you in leading someone back into the Catholic faith. This is a work of love. As Saint Thomas Aquinas once said, the greatest kindness one can render to any man consists in leading him from error to truth. So I encourage you to get deeper in your faith. Learn and understand the whats and the whys. And I'll end it with a question. Again, why are you Catholic? Thank you and God bless.